Thank you. Don't do that. Turn that on when you talk. Welcome to the Impact Fee meeting with the mayors. It is September 21st, 2022, and the time is 10:06 a.m. And I want to thank you all for coming. Commissioners present are Brooks and Duncan, and then Commissioner Filios, I believe, has joined us by Zoom or will be joining us by Zoom. Not on yet. Okay, so that is fine. Any changes to the agenda? I do not believe there are any. And so before we get started, I just want to say thank you so much for taking time out of your busy days and coming here to have this discussion with us. We serve the same constituency, and I think that this growth has posed strains on all of our agencies and entities, and so I think being partnered together and providing the best service possible without hurting the people who are here currently, the taxpayers, I think is an important subject that we need to talk about. So I would like to go around the room and introduce everybody, and you can just say your name and what city and maybe how long you've been in office. So I'm Leslie Duncan. I'm a commissioner here at Kootenai County, and I've been here about 3 3/4 years. So, and then to my left is our attorney, Pat Braden.
Ann Westcott, leading consultant.
David Callahan, Kootenai County Community Development.
Emily Smith, city attorney for Roscoe.
Mayor Vic Holmes, city mayor, 19 years.
Ron Jacobson, mayor of Post Falls for 9 years, and 12 involvement in the city of 30 years. And just received a text from Mayor Hammond, he's in line.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Shirley Hendrick, city administrator, city of Post Falls.
Okay.
Bill Brooks. I have a temporary job with the county.
Bob Norris, sheriff.
Scott Forsell, mayor of Hayden, 6 months.
Bill Hill, mayor of Athol, 2-some-odd years. Prior to that, 4 years on council.
Dan Edwards, mayor of Dalton Gardens, 2.5 years.
All right.
Kenzo Mahara, city attorney for the cities of Hauser and Harrison, going on 6 years.
All right, thank you all very much. And so this is the impact fee collection by individual Kootenai County cities. That's the main reason we wanted to bring you here today. And I will turn it over to Ann Westcott, who is our consultant.
Great. Well, fortunately or unfortunately, you already know me because I've been gracing your council meetings over the last year with your fire districts. So, except for Dalton Gardens, you do not know me. I am a very nice person, despite what you might hear from other people. So yes, as you know, as I've been in front of you over the past year with fire districts asking for you to collect impact fees on their behalf, the county has recently retained me to calculate impact fees for sheriff, jail, and parks and waterways. I've been doing county fees throughout the state. Over the past several years, a lot of counties are entering into this as well. And we know a lot of your cities already have impact fees for the services that you already have. I think as we look at growth regionally, while you all have different entities, whether it's a fire district or a city or the county, you all have, as Commissioner said, the same constituency, and they tend to be equally unimpressed with paying for growth. So the county is also then looking at options to ensure that growth pays its share of the capital that's necessary to keep the level of service constant. And you all know enough about impact fees that I'm not going to go through what impact fees are. We'll just get right into the main takeaways of the study and have a little bit of discussion. The reason, although you are here today, is that these fees by the county would need to be collected by each city on behalf of the county when someone pulls a building permit in an incorporated city. So it's exactly the same as what the fire districts have asked you to do. Cities do not have to ask the county to collect for them because you're collecting within your boundaries. So on page 3 here, Jonathan, that must not be it. There we go.
It's up there. It's that projector.
Oh, No, there we go, okay. Not really big in IT. Okay, growth projections. This study was all done and then KMPO released their new projections. So I redid everything. So there are some places where these numbers might not exactly match, either numbers that you saw 6 months ago, or they might be different from what you see in KMPO's report because I've extrapolated 2 more years onto the 2020 and 2030. But we are pretty generally agreed that in the county, all cities, we are looking at about 60,000 more people, another 22,000 plus households, and close to 5 million more non-residential square feet. That's pretty conservative, annual 3%. We were looking at closer to 4% in some of the northern cities in the county earlier, but we've kind of constrained it a little bit as we wait and see what happens in the market. So we'll start with sheriff first. You know that when we calculate either police impact fees or sheriff impact fees, the service is provided by bodies. So our level of service is measured by the number of deputies that we have per 1,000 population. If I were to take the entire population of Kootenai County and the number of deputies that currently provide service, whether primary service or backups and ancillary service, plus dispatch for most of you, we would have about a half of a deputy per 1,000 population. And if we know that we're going to grow by another 60,000, we would be adding 31 more deputies over 10 years. This 21,000 square feet, look at that. 21,000 square feet is physical space to put 31 more deputies and all of the ancillary additions that would go. So that would be probably another dispatcher, etc. And then additional weapons, radios, and vehicles for those deputies. So that's a $12 million capital improvement plan for the sheriff, and all of it is impact fee eligible. We've not listed any things, and there's no plan to be building anything that's to take care of an existing deficiency. So if I took that $12 million and I broke it out residential and non-residential within the county, divided it by the 22,000 new households and 5 million non-residential square feet, every new house built anywhere in the county, their proportional share would be $492.21 per non-residential square foot. Now, it is clear that, like many counties, although you guys make it more complicated than some counties, like many counties, you have sort of a woven amount of service delivery. So we have the sheriff's office, who is legally obligated to be there for the entire county. Some cities also have their own police departments, and they are providing their own patrol with police departments. Most cities, except for 2, rely on the county for dispatch. All of the cities rely on the county for dive team, the Marine Patrol, in many cases backup special investigations. So it's not a clear you're in or you're out. And that is what makes this a little bit difficult, is that I have to figure out a way to calculate fees so that they are equitable, that they're being paid by people who will be utilizing those services. Questions that you might have about sheriff. I'm going to kind of go through sheriff, jail, and parks, and then we'll talk specifically about how this is most equitably applied in each of your areas. Just wanted to kind of get the numbers in front of you. Do you have questions? Yeah, Emily.
Yeah, so normally when we calculate our impact fees for the city and our police department, we don't include vehicles because those typically don't have a 10-year lifespan, but I see you've included $2 million of vehicles here. Are you anticipating that the sheriff vehicles are going to last more than 10 years then?
The sheriff has told me that their vehicles will last 10 years.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good point. Other questions?
Yeah, good morning, Kenzo Mahara. I had a question in regard to the overlap with this and the fire. Recently, we've been asked by fire districts as well as the KCMSS to assess these fees, and we've gone to our constituents and essentially sold them on the idea of the impact fees paying for growth. My question is, why are we doing this in somewhat of more of a piecemeal fashion than all at one time? For example, the cities, when we adopt these, we have to jigger with our ordinances to allow for them. We have to enter into intergovernmental agreements. Why are we doing this in a piecemeal fashion instead of all at once?
Excellent question, Kenzo, because that's the order in which we were retained. And the fire districts have been working on this for the last 5 years. It took us an entire year even to start having, how many times I've been out to Hauser, to have these conversations. The county was not engaged in that conversation at that time. I think it was something that they were not interested in looking at. And in the last 3 years, have you seen such significant growth and significant political pressure, I suppose, to have growth pay its own way? The county felt that it should follow the lead of the cities and the fire districts in doing this as well. So it is, yes, another run through, but luckily you've already written your ordinances, so it'd be an amendment.
Thank you.
No, it's not the most efficient model, but I work in government, so I try to keep things a little, off the most efficient model. Kenzo, come on, work with me, buddy. There we go. Okay. It takes a long time before I can get you to loosen up. All right. Any other general questions? We'll look at jail and parks and then come back to the bigger questions. All right. So for the jail, obviously only the county provides the jail. The jail has an existing deficiency. They are already overcrowded, and they already have some issues that they need to resolve with the federal government about space. They also have 2 pods that were started, not really started, but maybe just sort of framed in 2018. Those 2 pods need to be built out just to deal with the problems they have right now. So that's up there in the top line. $7.6 million. That's going to come from all the taxpayers within the county. I believe it's in fund balance. It's already set aside and ready to go for that. So that needs to happen first before we talk about our level of service. So when I look, a pod will serve between, about 100-ish beds per pod, and when we think about how much more population there is, and assuming that the same number of people go to jail as you grow, which is not true. Actually, more people do the more dense you get, but we just used the same assumption that you would need 2 additional pods, or a little bit over 200 beds in order to accommodate growth over the next 10 years. So those 2 pods would be 100% impact fee eligible if growth were to pay its way, and we would not be asking existing taxpayers to pay for that. In addition to those pods, which are just beds, then you have all of the medical, kitchen, and other ancillary facilities that go with that. More inmates that need to be transferred, another transport van, weaponry, and radios again for those deputies. So that's a $21 million capital improvement plan over 10 years for the county jail. $13.8 million of it is growth related, and the rest needs to come from all taxpayers. And so if if new growth were to pay for the growth related share, each household would pay $566.25 per non-residential square foot. Any general questions about the needs of the jail?
I have.
Yes, come on.
I'm seeing that you are contributing all of the growth is what the purpose behind growing the jail. I just don't see any crime statistics or how do you know new growth is the ones that are going to be filling the jail and therefore needing to pay for this growth in the jail when we don't know that crime is attributable to the new growth itself? Crime could be attributable to existing people. Why is new growth paying for jail growth when they're not the ones necessarily causing it without crime statistics showing that?
existing people have already paid for the jail that's here. So everyone who's already here has used property taxes to pay for the jail thus far. So if I already live here, I can do as many crimes as I want because I have a bed at jail that's there for me. If I am coming in, I am adding the proportionate potential that there will be more people, more crimes. I mean, I suppose you could say if there were proof that all of the growth were it was all a convent or something, I don't know, where there were people that in no way would be in jail, then we wouldn't need to appropriate it to them. But I think it's a general practice that you assume if 0.2% of per capita goes to jail, then it will continue to be that way for the additional population.
Yeah, if we had to prove causation, no county in the state would be able to impose a jail impact fee. I think correlation is sufficient to justify it.
Is that a legal standard that you're using for correlation?
Well, how else would you attribute it? How else would you attribute it to growth?
I guess I wouldn't.
Well, there's no other. If you're going to require us to prove causation, then again, every jail impact fee from every county in the state that's imposed a jail impact fee is going to be subject to challenge. I don't think the legal standard requires that much proof.
What are the other counties that impose a jail impact fee?
Ada County is adopting theirs.
So they haven't done it yet.
Ada and Gem have adopted theirs. Payette and Elmore
Payette and
have
Elmore.
proposed one.
We're in the final public hearings for those other ones.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I just add some anecdotal stuff? When I got here, population growth was at 3%, district court growth was at 6%. So also our crime rates have gone up with the population, but our population is mainly retirement. So the population moving in here is not the ones causing the crime. I would say Spokane and Washington's population is a lot to do with it, and their policies over there. So
Still, with growth comes need for
Correct.
additional jail
Yeah.
space, and that's been demonstrated for a long. I'm sure Bob has plenty of statistics he can give us that can show
Right.
that relationship over the
right.
years.
So, but what I'm trying to say is our population, the demographic that's coming here is not the one causing the crime, but the crime is going up.
Right.
So
So we're gonna let them pay for it.
That's why I said that I don't think causation is. I don't think you have to meet that standard, or else no county in the state would be able to impose jail impact.
Yes, I agree.
I have a quick question. After dealing with Timberlake Fire District on this, okay, we've got numbers for the sheriff, for instance, $492 there for residential. Now over to the jail, it's $566. Who's paying for that? Who's that coming out of? Is it coming out of new structures, new
That would be-
homes?
So it would be a new
Yes.
residential
New-
unit.
And is it
It's
on a
stri-
fixed time, like 8 to 10 years and?
You
then
pay
it's-
once
Okay,
at building permit,
okay,
Yeah.
and you never pay again.
okay.
It's
Yeah.
added onto your building fee.
It
Now,
has
when we
to
say
be-
new, are we talking about, once again, the battle
Brand
we're
new.
dealing with is if I have a 1,500 square foot home and I want to move it to 500 more to get 2,000,
I would
but in
not
the
advise
original
that-
document, it said you would pay for that 500 square feet.
I do not advise that we nitpick that much.
Okay, thank you.
But some cities choose to.
Yeah.
But I think I've seen it done all ways. My feeling is if you decide to make your house bigger, it doesn't necessarily mean you're creating more crime.
Yeah,
It
you're
just
not-
means
you're
maybe
not-
I've-
you're not creating additional.
You're creating crime, but I'm going back, the fire districts are creating fire.
I was gonna
So
say,
that's
you're
why I
not-
say,
you're
by
not-
separating these out.
You're not creating, that would not create additional impact on
Okay.
the systems that we're,
Okay.
seeking impact
So
fees
it's a
for.
one-time
New-
user
New
fee.
construction will,
Okay.
and therefore, the impact fee would be.
But the
charged.
cities would be responsible for collecting it?
At building
With-
permit, if I
yeah,
came in
okay.
and built a
Within-
house, you would
okay.
say,
Within, if it's within city limits,
Okay.
yes.
and
Thank
then
you.
in the same way that you would collect the fees for the fire district and send them to the district, you'd
Right.
collect the fees for the county, send them to the county, and the county would pay you an
And the city and
administrative
the
fee for
county,
doing
the city
that.
and the county would have a written agreement.
Okay. I'm just
spelling
adding
out
these up, what the fire district wanted, what the
They
sheriff,
are
what the jail.
additive,
what-
yes.
You know,
Well,
the school's gonna come at it too next, so.
Yeah,
It'll
sheriff,
take a
jail,
couple
and parks
years.
would all
Yeah.
be with the county. and
Okay.
It would be just one intergovernmental agreement covering all three, should, the council choose to.
Okay, it might help slow down growth.
Maybe, yeah, maybe not. And it's kind of a self-leveling type of thing. If you don't have the growth, then we don't have as much of the need.
Right.
But if we do have the growth, then, we have the need and the means to pay for those needs.
And
Thank you
if
for
you do
answering
have the
that.
growth, at least the level of service does not decrease for everyone who's already there.
Right.
Because of the growth.
I had a follow-up question, and
Yeah.
I don't see this as a new need. I see this as an existing need, and we're essentially changing the funding format.
Which is an existing need.
The need for jails, the
Oh.
need for parks, the need for these services. And the question is we've had to explain to people that why they're, for sake of argument, their $3,000 or $5,000 or $7,000 building permit is now gonna be $4,000, $6,000 or $8,000 because of the fire and the emergency services.
Which is a fair question for them to ask.
Absolutely.
But I think we.
And so, as we all know that, when we get into fees, which are different than taxes, we have to make this kind of correlation, and I think it goes back to the counselor's or council's comment in regard to causation. Where do we draw that boundary in regard to the impact of the area of the city versus the crime in the county? I mean, we can draw this boundary in the county, and we can say, per every household, regardless of whether you're in city limits or not, this is the impact you have on these services. Or we could say, you know what, the impact of this city is greater than the other city, and adjust and I think that may have been the point, is, if you have certain areas of the county that have the higher crime statistics, I guess when I'm gonna be sitting in front of my council members, they're gonna say, we see the blotter, we've had 3 arrests in our city in the last month versus, a city that, sends thousands of cases to the jail a month. So that's kind of, or hundreds. So that's kind of where, where are we drawing this line in regard to the impact for the service vis-a-vis our cities? Are we truly asking to pay our fair share, or are we asking to essentially subsidize other places?
That's an interesting question, and I think it certainly would be asked anywhere. State statute is very clear on how these studies need to be developed. National practice has been very clear for 40 years on how it works, and there's a definitive amount of case study that shows how we would do this. My way of looking at this in simple terms is, if you are in a community that can prove you have a different level of demand than everyone else, show us that you have a different level of demand. We'll talk in a minute about how we can look at sheriff in a couple of different ways. But for jail, I live in Hauser and I go steal something from the mini mart in Spirit Lake. You're all a county. You're all a county, you're all a region. It could be all of the Pacific Northwest. There are people who do crimes, who go to jail. Do you want those people housed in a jail or not? This is a community-wide answer to that. The other extreme answer would be every city has their own jail, which is not a terribly responsible way to spend money. So to whatever extent you can provide data that shows that you do or do not utilize the county's services, we can certainly make those amendments. I just know several times I was here this winter, every time I was here, the sheriff was out running across lakes in northern Kootenai County after people who were burning things down. Should we look at Park and Waterways? I want to be respectful of your time. I also want to figure out how to work this. There we go. All right, Parks and Waterways. I don't have a lot of counties that do parks because you don't have a lot of counties that have as many beautiful natural resources. Kootenai County is very unique in that. Many cities have parks impact fees because they're doing a municipal park and recreation level of service. The county provides what I consider an additive level of service. people live here, people enjoy living here, people come here and visit and have tournaments, et cetera, because of your marine realities, the opportunities that you have. And we know that the county operates numerous marine facilities that are not duplicated by the cities. And so what we've included in here is not only facilities that, there's a lot in here that is just stuff that the county needs to fix as it grows. And then there's a proportional share when it's applicable of like a new marine slip or a new boat ramp or a new et cetera, in order to meet the demand of all of the new people who are moving into the county who have boats and want to be able to get onto the lake, for example. So you'll see in this CIP that we have boathouse replacement. And in the report that we've sent you is a much more specificity as to how each of these have been determined. But in this case, there were 6 slips that needed to be replaced, and only 20% of those 6 slips were because of growth. So you'll see the total cost, the amount that goes to impact fees, and the amount that would go to all taxpayers.
Sorry, Ann, maybe you could explain how the growth portion was calculated for these items. And note here that most of these items, the growth portion is less than 100%. So, it's a recognition of existing need, which would not be paid from impact fees, plus, a portion attributable growth, which would be.
Right, good point. So the standard for parks and level of service is the number of acres per thousand. You have 0.78 acres per thousand, but that's not really as relevant as all the different components that go into operating a marine type county, a recreation and tourist county. So again, an example on that boathouse replacement, they need 6 more slips. 20% of those 6 slips are new additional slips, and the other ones are just going to be repaired or replaced. You can see that in restroom additions and replacements, recreation shelters. So in most cases, Nick has actually given me a list of the exact number and has given me a mathematical calculation, whether it's 2 out of 6 or X. When in doubt, if I don't have a mathematic to use it and it's not something that's like 2 out of 6, I will use the growth rate in some of those cases. And that's outlined in the written report. But you can see things like irrigation and drinking water systems and the playground equipment, none of that would be impact fee eligible. Developing additional parks to keep the level of service of 0.78 acres per thousand consistent is in there. You will see if we were to keep the level of service consistent, it would be 45 new acres of parks. The county has been talking about regional parks, open space, that perhaps may be along the river. That would be far more expensive than the $6 million that we've calculated in here, and I believe that the county would be discussing with the public a bond if that were something that would come to play. So we've just put a placeholder in there for what growth conservative proportional share of that could be. If you look on page 9, you'll see more of those services like marine pump out stations and infrastructure, a floating island, parking lot expansion. All of these pieces go to allow your marine recreational environment to thrive. Whether that invites more people in, maybe that's an unintended consequence. But so the Parks and Waterways Department has a $35 million CIP for the next 10 years. 13 million of it is growth related, and the rest of it will need to come from property taxes. And that we do not charge parks impact fees to non-residential, so it would be $593 per residential unit. Certainly in a community like yours, I think you could make a case that tourist development, hotels, I mean, there could be things that we could make a case would be driving some of this need. It could be broken out in that way. Questions about parks? Nick is here if you have any questions. All right, what general questions do we have? You'll see on the last page I did give you some comps from other counties. But again, you'll see in Payette and Elmore County, a jail costs what a jail costs, and it's divided by more people in Kootenai County than it's divided by in Payette or Elmore. So much higher jail costs in southern Idaho. Ada County is going to have more competitive fees, more similar to Kootenai County. And you can see that there, and no one else in the county has parks because no one has the parks infrastructure that you have.
Another question, Ann.
Yeah.
Essentially, when I look at this, it's cost share per new residential unit. I have $593 for the parks, and then roughly $1,100 between the sheriff and the jail. So essentially, what the cities are being asked to do is tack on another $1,700 per residential permit. Is that price fixed, or is there going to be a escalation component for?
As I advise all of my clients to put an annual inflationary index so that we can keep track of whether up and down of construction costs. Some jurisdictions do it and some don't. Most who don't do it call me a year later saying, how do I do this again? Because that was a mistake. I would rather have it go up $3 a year than you wait for 5 years and then say we undercollected and now we can't build half of the things on our CIP. It seems to be more transparent. And particularly if costs go down, which some are hoping they will, we can adjust that way as well.
And then my next question is I know this is kind of a executive summary type report. Do we have the report that actually goes through the study? And
Jonathan, you sent everyone the full study, didn't you? Okay, I thought it went out with your invitation. We'll make sure you get the full study. It will be very exciting to read.
And then we have, looks like per retail square foot, office square foot. I don't see any.
It'd be 46 cents.
Right, well, I don't see any calculations related to improvements to existing buildings. For the mayor's example, if I have a 1,500 square foot home, I want to put another 500 square foot addition on.
So it's new. We give existing residents the benefit of the doubt that if they have a parcel and a house and they're going to make their house bigger, maybe they just want a craft room or a dad den or whatever. We're not going to charge them more. They're not adding capacity on the need to go to jail, to have a sheriff, or to use the parks. That is kind of a concession for existing taxpayers. So if I build a new house, that is going to get an impact fee. If I build a new non-residential, a Walmart, a gas station, a dental office, a hospital, whatever, I will pay per square foot on non-residential. If I have an existing dental office and I'm going to double it, I would pay on the additional number of square feet. That's just practice and impact fees. And remembering that any specific development that feels like it's on the outside of the bell curve can come to the county and ask for an individualized assessment. And in the same way as with the fire districts, the city's not responsible for any of that. If someone comes to pay a building permit and says, oh, we shouldn't have to pay this jail, you just send them to the county. The county's responsible for working that out. These two gentlemen are responsible for working that out with them so that it's not your problem. You are a collector, a pass-through entity. I do know that in Ada County, for example, they finally just the cities just said, go pay your fee to the highway district and bring us a receipt. That's always another way to do it. It's just, it's where it's easiest, for one-stop shopping for someone. Yes, ma'am.
Does the county charge impact fees on the unincorporated portions of the county?
Oh, gosh, yes. Yes.
We're in that process now, but it would happen sooner than, any of the cities that choose to charge.
Essentially, all of the cities and the county all have to agree to start collecting these at building permit.
Well,
for
I
it to-
understand that, so my next question, and then I'll have a follow-up on that, would be, are you willing to charge these same fees on your residents to pay the cities because they are using our roads, they are using our parks, they are using our police services? And that being the case, where does this end? Does the city of Grafton say to Post Falls, hey, we've got a water park, so you need to start collecting impact fees to help pay for our portion of the water park? And they've got a boat launch? We don't have that, so should they be charging fees on us? Where do you think this should end? Are we just gonna keep adding and adding and adding into the cost of housing until no one in this county can afford to live here?
You have
Do
a
you have-
very good point, and I would respond that in a perfect world, we would have a funding source that just took care of everything and it was not an issue. When we started putting boundaries around what property taxes could pay for, when House Bill 389 was adopted, that does not give you 100% tax revenue from new growth, you start to create these constraints. And you have two choices: let your level of service decline or find another funding source. Idaho gives you only one other funding source. Other states have lots of them. And you're completely right. And sometimes it's very difficult for me with highway districts is, well, should you pay this and a part of this? It could be completely out of control if we made it all, surgically fair in that way. I don't think that's possible. I think the best we can do with Idaho's impact fee law and funding source at this point is to make sure that as your cities and your county grows, they don't see a longer wait time for a deputy to show up. They don't see unhoused inmate populations, and they don't see we can't go get on the lake anymore. It is, this is why I love having you all in one room, is this is a regional growth conversation that generally I would turn it all back to you, is that this is what you all need to figure out, is how you're going to do it, and you're all equal partners in that, and you all use each other's stuff. And I am just here to give you the number that you would ask new growth to pay if they were to not make it worse, essentially. And you had one more question on top of that.
That was my follow-up.
Okay.
Where does it end?
It doesn't. It doesn't end until we say it's going to end, and I usually end it as, I'm going to go as far as if there's clear duplication of service that's not reciprocal, like you use their parks, they use your parks, in that way. Also, someone would argue, well, charge people who are non-residents in your city to use your parks. And we know that as a city budget analyst, that's ridiculous. It's very hard to do that. So there is no perfect way. It's the way that you feel is most equitable. And the conversation we're having now is not who should pay the city or the county. It's who should pay the existing taxpayer or new growth.
I understand all that, but we are in a situation where there's not affordable housing in this county. And driving these costs up is not gonna help that. It's not gonna alleviate it. It's gonna make it impossible for existing residents, the children especially of those existing residents, to purchase property in this county. And they will eventually be required to leave if we don't quit driving these costs up.
I totally agree with you. I hear that throughout the state.
That's where it ends, is if we have a mass exodus, people leaving the county.
Well, and I would say
I don't think
too,
anybody desires that.
but people are getting priced out of their homes with the amount of taxes too. So if we're not going to charge new growth and then the existing people have to pay, then that creates a whole nother problem with the people who've owned their homes for 20, 30, and 40 years. They can't afford their property taxes now, so now they have to leave. So there's no easy answer.
Yes, Mayor.
Let me just give you my opinion. 22 years ago, we purchased a house that was in the county. We had it annexed into the city. My county taxes didn't go down. My city taxes went up significantly. And that's a decision I made because I wanted to be in the city of Post Falls. But I'm still paying for my county taxes, which goes to the sheriff, which goes to the waterways, which goes to the parks. So here are my concerns with the impact fees. The sheriff's impact fee is being equally assessed to everyone in the county, including incorporated areas. cities are not uniform in the services they receive. For example, Ratham and Post Falls do not receive 911 or police services from the county. We have our own.
Correct.
Coeur d'Alene does receive police services, does not receive police services, but they do receive the 911 services.
Correct.
So if the city of Post Falls were receiving services, we would object, if we were receiving services, we would object to items like the guns, radios, the vehicles being included in the fees, because we think that's subject to challenge at the court level because of a requirement for 10 years, 10-year life. The sheriff's impact fee assumes that the sheriff is performing the same enforcement activities in the unincorporated and incorporated areas of the counties, which isn't the case. Now, let me say this. I have a ton of respect for all law enforcement agencies. So it's not, I'm not taking shots at the sheriff's department at all, but it's apples and oranges. The jail is uniformly received by the cities, but the calculation within the report, we feel needs additional explanation. We figured it was, and I believe you brought it up, we feel it was somewhat surface level analysis. We would like to see more information on that. The cities provide their own park services, which are used by county residents along with city residents. Same as the county parks are used by both. It's unfair for city residents to collect impact fees for county parks when a far greater number of county residents use the city parks and the county is not collecting city impact fees. And we have, Coeur d'Alene has a tremendous number of parks, as does the city of Post Falls. The city of Post Falls has 3 waterfront parks, and they're extremely heavily used. We do not charge impact fees on the unincorporated areas to help pay for those. I'm going to follow up what Mayor Holmes said. The impact fee calculation, it creates a disincentive for developing in the city, which is the opposite of what state code envisions. Idaho Code 676502F says, the purpose of local land use planning act is to encourage urban and urban-type development within incorporated areas. Now we're adding another layer of impact fees, which, we get people live in the county right now, south of the river, and they have no interest in being part of the city because they do not want to pay the city taxes, nor would they want to pay city impact fees. And this goes back to, I think for the many years that I've been involved, we've had an extremely good collaborative working relationship with other cities, with the county. I really feel that the county should have spoken with the cities prior to engaging in the study. It's my understanding that the advisory committee had no municipal representation on it. And no impact fee report was sent ahead of the meeting. It was a week or so old, and we had to request the report itself. The city of Post Falls had to request a report after finding out about a meeting held on August 31st. And this is maybe a little off topic, but I think it comes to the heart of it. You talk about constraints and lack of tax revenue available. Decision was made to start withholding penalty and interest from the cities and the other taxing districts. It's going to cost us $70,000 to $100,000. Decision was made unilaterally without touching base with this. And the statement was made, the treasurer did not have to ask for permission. He made the decision unilaterally. It's not negotiation. And I realize that's a little bit different than what we're talking about right now. But to me, the whole thing works against the collaborative effort that we have had. And I believe Mr. Kahara said it's trying to find additional funding sources, and we are facing the potential of losing anywhere from $70,000 to $100,000 because of a decision made without being consulted. So I'm all for the county charging impact fees. I am not in favor of the city collecting impact fees for the county for building permits pulled within the city.
What about the jail?
Different animal. I said that is something that we all draw on. That's something we could look at.
Every city in the county uses the county.
I agree, and that's what I said.
I don't understand the flat refusal as to that specific fee.
I didn't say there was flat refusal of that specific fee.
Okay, then I'll leave that as,
Yeah,
clarification.
I said we needed more information on that. And it would have been nice to have been included in the discussion as it went forward.
I think that, that information needs to be provided.
The city of Hayden. City of Hayden largely agrees with Mayor Jacobson. And going back to a comment that Mayor Holmes made and Mayor Jacobson made about affordable housing, has the county considered reducing or eliminating these types of impact fees for demonstrable affordable housing?
Onto that. Yes, it was one of the things I was going to mention in what is a very common conversation about the more fees we add, the more expensive housing becomes, and all of the counties within the state are all of your cities are struggling with that. For affordable housing, the statute allows you to exempt affordable housing from an impact fee. You would have to pay it in the same way that if the city had an impact fee and you exempted affordable housing consistent with your own housing objectives, you would need to pay for the affordable, the fee has to be paid because the capital has to be paid for. But affordable housing is an exemption that's allowed in state statute because it serves the greater good. I think workforce housing can be included in that definition depending on how your legal counsel looks at it. But I also am hearing that you are concerned about the housing costs for everyone, whether it's affordable or workforce. But yes, if you are specifically trying to, it is affordable housing that cannot be built. There's no margin really to eat into if, you add $20,000 more onto so yes, the answer is yes, you can exempt affordable housing.
Do you have any concepts as to how that would be determined or applied?
Absolutely. I have many clients who have done it. You can just say anyone who's building housing that's going to be accessible to people at X percentage of the median income. There's a variety of different ways we can do that. And I have many sources I can cite for you.
Thank you.
I have a question, just because I don't know. Are there any county representatives involved in the building permit process with city planning and building permits?
Yeah. Yeah, cities issue their building permits,
Right.
the county issues its building permits.
I was just curious with the comment that the cities haven't been invited to be a part of this, but apparently the county is not invited at the city level either.
That's because the county doesn't collect city impact fees, but the county is now
But
asking
it
cities to
impacts,
collect.
it impacts the county.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely impacts the
It
county.
impacts the county, but we're not collecting impact fees. We're collecting impact fees for our police force, which doesn't impact the sheriff's department. And we are collecting impact fees for
Well,
parks.
It impacts the jail. I'm at 485 today.
Bear
Should
in
be
mind, and I
361.
answered the question, we would discuss the jail. That's a different animal. But we just said we need more information on that.
Yeah, you did. I was satisfied.
And I have a quick question. When can we expect a final report from the CIP? Because this draft is from July, and obviously this is old numbers compared to the new stuff that you showed today. So are we going to get a final?
I
sent
wanted
us?
to kind of see what the feedback was here, so definitely, I don't think there's final until, there's no point of having a final report and then say that we're being collaborative, so
Okay.
I can give you an updated draft,
That would
yes.
be awesome, yeah, because like Mayor Jacobson said, we had to go through a formal public records request just to get this one. It wasn't given to us freely.
Oh, you could have called me, Emily,
Yeah,
and I would have been happy to
you
give you
could've-
one.
Yeah, I would have, I
You
should
could've-
That would have been
Yeah,
really
I
easy.
would've, if you would've emailed me, I would've sent it right.
That was
No,
a
yes,
county oversight in that
Yeah.
it just got missed. We expected to send it out to everyone, so.
I'll make sure to do that, and I didn't realize that you were on this project.
Same person, yes.
Hey, Ann?
Yes, Mayor.
You know, when this subject came up a few years ago about the impact fee, it was an easy pill to swallow because I believe most of us looked at it impacted the county from outside the county. People moving into our county, now it's affecting everyone in the county. So I'm just saying now the pill's becoming harder to swallow. So my question is, and you already probably know the answer, is this compulsory or voluntary? Do we have to vote on it to accept it? Or is this something the county's shoving down our throats?
Wow,
I mean,
you guys
we
have
Just a
history
report,
here,
I
don't you?
realize, I'm just saying, do you know the answer to the question?
can't make the cities do anything.
No.
I mean, it has to be collaborative.
Okay.
So this is very similar to your situation with the fire district. I would not want my client to accept impact fees from growth except for 10% of an area. That's just not fair. So what I would advise my client, the county, to do is let's continue this conversation. I have already been doing other calculations on, I mean, impact fees aren't rocket science. It's not about the math. It's about what your policy objective is. Your policy objective is keeping the level of service as you grow, not overly burdening additional taxpayers, and having it be equitable fair. So the equitable and fair part, we have some work to do to really be able to see what, the situation is in each jurisdiction. I think that can continue to become more finite. If, Athol and Rathdrum said, no, we're not doing this, then we would need to subsidize Athol and Rathdrum for everyone else. So that's where it just doesn't seem fair. So I just close off the opportunity that we cannot get to consensus, and I would encourage my clients to continue to work toward what is an equitable and fair way. And you know what? One of the answers could be, we're okay if the level of service declines. Just say that, and then we don't need to worry about it. Because it's not clear cut. There's a lot of interweaving here, and it's not easy.
Well, our council's been very unanimous that finding an additional way of avoiding the taxpayers' voting rights. In other words, kind of assuming that they're not gonna bite that pill, so we're gonna do this, imposing this here impact fee on them as another way to generate money. I understand both sides. The impact, it's obvious to me.
And I think
But
your
our council
attorney said that wasn't the
absolutely,
thing.
now to the fire district, absolutely no way.
Right.
There was no way.
I mean, your city council has said it needs to go to a vote. Your
Right.
attorney has said that's not a thing. We can't do that. So,
Right.
is there more public, is there a huge conversation about growth in Kootenai County? I don't know what your county is doing. I have lots of other counties that either are or are not having regional conversations
It's
about
a hot
growth.
topic right now. One of the problems I have personally as a mayor, they're representatives. That's what they are. They represent the citizens, but in Athol, we're a little bit bigger than the city of Athol. Yeah, we're a small little town, but service a very large area. So when we make a decision, it is for a much larger area than the city limits, but we will be the ones paying the bill.
Right.
And so, it's one of those things that, it's hard for council people to realize, take your personal opinion out of this. Find some way to engage the citizens. What do they feel about it? They're the ones that's gonna be paying the bill. It's a tough one, just letting you know where they're at right now.
Oh, I know.
Well, I mean, just an example, going back to the fire district with Timberlake, I mean, you could, let the citizens of the city know that this is a way for, the citizens of the city to pay for the impact to the city, the new growth in the city, to pay for the that impact to the city, whereas the people in the district outside the city limits, that new growth would pay for the impact to that area, and then, Timberlake is made whole through the process.
Right. Well, at this point,
And hopefully,
the citizens are content with the level of service. They
Right.
really are. I will admit, sheriff, that's a whole nother matter,
We want to keep,
Schools and
try to
sheriff
keep
are
that
big.
level of service where it's at.
Right,
So,
right. That's my,
I
my
think-
question.
Yeah, I mean, I think you understand.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
Just get your council to get on board.
One of my suggestions might be, just because I know we're reaching our time, is this really was just intended to be the beginning of this discussion. So when you say, what are you asking of us? We're not really asking anything. Ultimately, the county wants to keep its level of service without overly burdening existing taxpayers, in the same way that those of you do who have impact fees. As far as sheriff is concerned, because exactly what you said, Mayor, I know there are differing levels of service. You have this patchwork of different. I've already done alternate calculations on what those would look like. I needed to get through the PowerPoint to be able to get into that level of specificity. So I can probably say with the county's agreement that level of continued conversation will be coming. There are pros and cons to every different way you can do this, but I think I have some ideas about how to create more equity among sheriff to identify, where the dispatch is or is not used, where patrol, and then there are parts that you just use, you mutually reinforce, etc. How surgical you're going to get about recovering every dollar and where you're not. So I think that is a conversation, some more information on jail and how that is being used. Parks, I mean, it's an interesting concept of what if we all charge each other? What wouldn't happen if we didn't have impact fees? What would the county do or not choose to do if they didn't have impact fees? So I think this gave me what I needed to know is where are you? What's your experience? I can go back, we'll get that updated report for you to look at, and then.
I have a question I just thought of. In Ada County, where they've passed the jail impact fee, have they entered into agreements with their cities, Boise, Garden City, Meridian?
They've entered into all of the agreements. We're just waiting to schedule the hearing.
But they,
So,
okay.
Everyone's agreed.
Okay.
This was my model, was in Ada County, we got all the mayors in one room, and it was slightly the same level of contention as I feel here. And there, I'm not just looking at you, I'm mostly looking over here. I'm mostly looking at Emily. I'm looking at Emily. Yes. It was, and I sit back here and I think, okay, different county, same situation. After many, all of those counties have impact fees, and there's not a lot of unincorporated county in Ada County, but yes, all of the cities did agree to collect sheriffs being collected in the unincorporated county because every city has their own very municipal level police department. There's no rural police department out there. But everyone's collecting jail, everyone's collecting coroner, everyone's collecting EMS. We did not do coroner here. We looked at it and the commission decided not to proceed with that. So, yes, they agreed. All the agreements have been signed. We're just getting through the last public hearing. Because sometimes I have a hard time getting commissioners to agree on dates.
My request would be as you move this forward, that you include the cities in the discussion, so you know what we're thinking. Because it comes as a surprise to us, we hear about impact fees and the question was asked, no, we're under no obligation, I believe that's what you said, to collect these. Do we want to be good neighbors? Absolutely. We've had a great working relationship, and all of a sudden, over the last month, we've had a couple things pop up where we weren't included, and it's going to hurt us financially.
Yeah.
That's not acceptable. So if you can include the municipalities in the discussion, I think you're going to be way ahead of the game.
And I'm going to kind of check out on the whole treasurer's thing because that's just not my gig. But
I would like to, too.
Yes, but I realize that there is some angst that's associated with that, and I'm just going to push it over somewhere else and say that, again, that I needed to have some answers to show you before there was a conversation. So this was not, we want you to vote on your way out. This was, all right, we're now doing a study that's similar to the studies that you have, and let's talk about this. So I've gotten some great feedback. I think the commissioners would want me to go back to the drawing table, and definitely, I think from here we can do these maybe by Zoom, sort of here's a new idea. What do you think of this? What do you think of this?
Is that what you anticipate going forward, is doing periodic Zoom meetings to catch up the cities on what you've been doing, or are we doing?
Can you use your microphone?
Sorry. What are the next steps that you guys are envisioning? Are we gonna do another one of these meetings and in the next month? Are we gonna do Zoom meetings?
Didn't really know till we got to this meeting what we were doing. So I think what I'm doing is I'm going back, coming up with some different ways to look at this. I will let my clients look at that, and then we will send it to you. I am not generally in support of any process that does not involve the people who are involved, so I would not personally not include you. I just will not include you until there's something to talk about.
Yeah, I think definitely one or more subsequent meetings would
Would be plenty.
Everybody in here, and whether in person or virtually, and, maybe in Coeur d'Alene when they're able to come, other cities in our.
Question, are these impact fees, for the next 10 years and they're gonna stop, or they're gonna be ongoing after the 10 years?
Excellent question. This is a 10-year capital improvement plan. So you'd need to charge these fees for 10 years to be able to get this. Let's say in 10 years, you're all completely growed out and David's out of a job and you're not gonna permit any more building. Then you obviously don't need impact fees anymore and it would be over. Legally, they have to be updated every 5 years. So kind of every 5 years, we have this conversation again. Is this still a funding source that you want to use? We have to recalculate everything so it represents reality. So
And
it would.
we don't have to wait 5 years. That's
I
just
would
the
do-
legal standard.
Right. We do it more often in many communities, but yes, it could end up being, I mean, I believe some of the cities in Kootenai County have had impact fees for over 10 years. So where it continues to be an equitable and fair funding resource as a complement to property taxes, the county could consider to do that.
Very good.
And you would have an intergovernmental agreement with the county and could continue to decide whether or not you wanted to continue collecting as well.
Right, okay. So just a comment from my professional side. Obviously, we have to have law and order to function. So I really appreciate our first responders and our, police department, our fire departments and things like that. I, as a mayor, I've gone out on several ride-alongs with the sheriff's office just to see what they do, how they do it, where they take these guys, when they take them to jail, and how it's monitored, how it's handled. I've personally called 911. Calls have gone unanswered. They called me back about a minute or two later. I'm like, well, thanks for calling me back. I appreciate that. I know you guys are busy and you're short-staffed. So I am totally for making sure that we are funded, well-funded in our first responders. And because that's the lifeblood of how we live our lives, right? I love that you guys are taking the angle on passing the fees on to new growth. That's fair to us as us locals that have been here all of our lives. And, I appreciate that aspect of it. I don't think it's a huge dollar amount. I'm a developer, builder. I'm a general contractor. And these fees, when I build a house for somebody, I hand over the keys, they're going to end up with between $50,000 and $100,000 in equity on average in their home. And for them to take, the contractor can take a few extra bucks out of his pockets to fund our sheriff department, our jails, and our parks for the next 10 years. This is a no-brainer to me. I mean, everybody should be on board and not complaining and criticizing about this. I know we have to ask questions, but I really feel like this is really a no-brainer because you're not going after the existing taxpayers. You're going after new growth, which is totally fair. And the last thing I have is there any way of going back to the board of Ada County and changing that number from just by $1?
I know, right?
Who voted on that? Oh my gosh.
Well, we do things differently in southern Idaho, so the number worked out for us, and
Please, for the 10 years, I've got to pay
there
this
were a lot of
fee.
people that thought, could it be 66650
Got that
or
prefix in
something?
this county too.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my
Thank you,
comment.
sir, thank you.
Let's end this meeting.
Is there anybody on Zoom who has comments? Okay. All right, anybody on Zoom have comments? Are they muted or? All right, I'll wait till they chime in if they want to be. Just so how it came about, we had citizen after citizen, and not just in the incorporated area. I think, what, are we 70-30 now in population? 70% of the population in cities, 30% in unincorporated? 80-20. So we had all of your residents come to us and say, you need to collect impact fees. So we started down this path. It is a conversation. I'm dispassionate. I'm like, my constituents want it, I'll go after it. Can't make it happen, can't make it happen. So that's how it is. But everybody does enjoy this whole community. And I like to think of it as a community. I don't like to think of it as this city against this city and that city and we're all separate. I like to think of it as one big part. I mean, we look at Kootenai County and we say, this is the lifestyle that I want to live. This is where I want to raise my kids. And so these things all work together to do that. And I hope that we can come to some type of agreement, because I have more people getting priced out of their homes tax-wise than people coming here and saying, well, I'm not going to pay another $1,600 for my house. Who says that? Nobody, especially when we're getting, thousands upon even $100,000 over asking price in this market. So that'll change, and that's fine, and this is how we can keep reviewing it. But we do appreciate the cities coming out here, and we want to work together, and there's always going to be differences, and I'm not going to speak to the treasurer thing specifically, except that has alleviated some tax burden across the entire county, not just in particular cities. So that is all I have for today. Any other comments? We will definitely reach out and touch and be in lockstep with Ann and getting all the information out to the cities, which I do apologize that you didn't have the original report for before today. So I didn't hear anybody chime in on Zoom, so anything else? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
11:11, Tina.